Last episode was part 2 of Dover with £1 billion. Today, it's part 3. We left things with them getting relegated. They'd gone through Ollie, got promoted up to the Championship, made it to the Premier League, and then finished rock bottom. Did they bounce back? How have they got on since? Let's find out together, shall we? So here we are, 2043, and Dover, of course, relegated from the Premier League. In the Championship, they have finished 8th. Yeah, they even qualify for the playoffs. Now, granted, they only finished 6 points off the playoffs, but with a +4 goal difference, wasn't a good season. Now, worth noting, Regan Slater came in to be their manager, and to be fair, when you look at his actual attributes, he's a really, really good member of staff. Regan here should be doing a great job as manager. He was previously at Ipswich, you can see before that manager of Middlesbrough, where, well, he was relegated from the Premier League, but we're just going to pretend that's not there. Dover, having been relegated, actually cut their wage budget a little bit, and they didn't even have the biggest wage budget in the league. And, actually, they spent 35 million. Sheffield United spent 80 million pounds in the window. And while Sheffield United spent a load of money and actually got promoted via the playoffs, our little team Dover did not. Here's what they did in the transfer market. And in fact, it looks like they shed a hell of a lot of money, including a quite notable sale going through halfway through the season. So Zach Culverhouse was the biggest of the sales that Dover made, sold for £18.75 million halfway through the year. He'd actually only joined for 1.8 million. And when I look at him, he doesn't look like anything special. I'm hoping, maybe this is a sign that Dover are about to do some more sensible transfers. Maybe. Elsewhere on the outs, they sold Brad Baker here for £16.5 million. Again, seems like a pretty good sale by all accounts. And of course, we covered it last episode, but Milan Stevanovic here, the Serbian international, they sold for £9.4 million. He was a player who on paper looked phenomenal, but for them hadn't really been playing, and well, over in La Liga, he's still not doing that great. So actually, Dover, good sales this year. Now, with their relegation from the Premier League, they only spent £18 million. I say only, obviously, relatively speaking. That is still quite a lot of money. The most notable new addition, Kenneth Paul, joined the club for £7.25 million. This man snapped up and away from Crystal Palace, and to be honest, again, he looks quite good. He looks way better than the players they were signing, 10 years ago. All in all, though, year one, not a phenomenal year, not promoted, not bouncing back immediately. We're going to go to 2045. I'm going to give them 2 more years to try and get promoted. If they just stagnate now in the Championship and don't get to the Premier League, I will be a little bit concerned. They've still got 700 million in the bank. 2045, good news, Dover are in the Premier League. Bad news that they have finished bottom. So they were promoted after just 2 years stuck in the Championship. They won the playoffs having finished 6th. And I'll tell you what, look at this league table and how close it was. They scraped in and then they went all the way through the playoffs. You can see here, beat Bristol City 4-3. And then in the final, they took on the one, the only Bournemouth. And, in the battle of the coastal places, is Bournemouth a city or a town? Is Dover a city? I don't know. The border of the battle of the coastal places. It's not going to catch on, is it? But anyway, they won 3-2. Moving on. So the transfers they made for that promotion season were pretty much non-existent. Sold a few players, signed a couple. Antonio Aguirre here was actually signed at the end of the year. I'm going to go look at the best 11. I want to know who helped. So top goal scorer in that season was Fitsum Samuel. This man has been at the club through thick and thin. He was signed on a free transfer from Blackburn. I remember him joining like it was, last week, because that's when I recorded the video. But it was 2037, and 8 years later, look at these performances. He struggled when they've got to the Premier League, but he has got double-figure goals every single season in the Championship. A Dover legend, dare I say. I've said Dover legend. Turns out he's not even in the icons or favoured personnel, so that's awkward. The only other player in that promotion team that got above a 7.0 rating was this man, Nathaniel Solis. Now, Argentine international, 54 caps, an incredible creative player who, for now at least, we're going to ignore the fact he's requested to leave the club. We're going to pretend that's not there. He joined for 3.8 million from Derby. He got double-figure assists both seasons there in the Championship. This year in the Premier League, got 5 player of the matches. Unfortunately, despite these good performances over the last few years, as I've already mentioned, he couldn't save them from the drop. They finished bottom. I will say this time around, they finished closer to everyone else. Last time they were in the Premier League, they got 18 points. This year, 29. So surely by that logic, it's improving by 11 every time. Next time they get promoted, 40 points and safety, maybe. Now, in this promotion season, Dan Barnes left the club to go to Fulham. He was not an insignificant sale. They sold him for 7.75 million plus a player exchange. I have noticed Dover are doing a lot of player exchanges. The man they got in return was this man. They got scammed, didn't they? I mean, to be fair, at least they got like 7 or 8 million plus Rui here. If they just did a straight swap, definitely a scam. Elsewhere on the ins, they actually spent 61 million. Joe Murray, the most significant new addition, 29 years old, looks like a very good centre-back, a player who had long been established for Aston Villa, but they decided to let him go. On paper, he looks great. Performance-wise, he's not done amazing. Why has he got so many player traits for a centre-back? Gets forward whenever possible. I'm not going to question it. They picked up a couple of players for £12 million. The first was this man, Berisha, Kosovo international, 64 caps. Looks like a good creative attacking player. You can see he was released by PSG, went to Strasbourg. They flipped him for £12 million. Fair play Strasbourg in the Premier League, 3 goals, 2 assists. So not a great impact by Daniel. One man who had a bit more of an impact was this man, Gavin Dowling, signed from Derby again. Did Derby get relegated? No. They've signed a lot of players from Derby, I've noticed. Derby weren't even in the Premier League. This man hadn't played in the Premier League, well, ever. He signed for £12 million. He looks like a really good striker. Somewhat surprised he's not played any games for England. I've just noticed they signed him for £12 million. He's already joining Hanover. How much did they sell him for? £10 million. They've made a loss of £2 million. Well, you know what, Gavin? You had a good 1 year at Dover. He got double figure in goals, but wasn't enough to keep them up. So Gavin was the top goal scorer. A couple of other players who have been around a while who, well, pulled their weight somewhat. Jonathan Partridge has been here since he joined the club in the Championship almost 10 years ago now. You can see he joined for about £1 million. He has grown into an okay player. A couple of double figure kind of goal seasons for the man who has, well, largely shone in the Championship. Daniel Berisha, the Kosovoan, actually got the highest average rating. A 7.27 in 15 appearances, not too bad. The next highest, Regan Dainty. He was signed for £9 million from Blackburn, and he's done okay. I mean, they've not stayed up, but I do feel like their signings in the last few years have actually got better. You might have noticed it, Dover, having been relegated, currently managerless. We left things last time, and Regan Slater was in charge. He was in fact sacked halfway through their second season in the Championship. John Swift came in, got them promoted via the playoffs, and then he was sacked not long later. And since then, Luke Williams came in to try and save the team. Could the regen manager do it? No, he got sacked a month ago now. So they're well into the process of finding a new manager. Kind of interested to see who they might appoint. The bank balance, by the way, is very quickly depleting. It's gone down, I think, by about 200 million since we started this episode today. Looking at their league history, they're becoming a bit of a yo-yo team. I think I might have just made a billionaire Norwich team for all intents and purposes, but hopefully they're going to break that cycle. We are going to go forward 2 seasons. Hopefully they're going to have got relegated, then obviously got promoted next season, and then stayed in the Premier League next year. I'm hoping they're not going to be bottom in the Prem. I'm hoping they're going to be in the Prem, I suppose, as a starting point. Let's go find out if they've managed it. The year is 2047. We are now 25 years into this experiment. Dover, I can't believe I'm getting teary-eyed. They have stayed up in the Premier League, folks. They got 40 points. They actually did the whole kind of improving by the same amount every year. I'm an oracle. So after their relegation down to the Championship, they bounced back, and for the first time, they won the Championship title. They were up there battling with Southampton to the death. They got promoted, and then this most recent season, finishing 17th, they got 10 wins to their name, and West Ham won the league. This is a weird timeline. I went to check West Ham to find out if they'd had a tycoon takeover. They've not had a tycoon takeover. They have done this legitimately. They've also won the Champions League multiple times. 3 times in the last 8 years. Have I gone too far with this experiment? I mean, to be fair, it's all Football Manager's doing. I just let the game play. But I feel like we might be too far into the future now. Anyway, Dover. Let's keep on focus for the video. Billy Gee is their manager at the moment. He joined the club in 2045. Was he the man they appointed to get them back to the big time after they sacked their previous managers? Looking at it, the answer is yes. He has now been at the club for just under 2 years, and in that time, he's got them promoted, and this year, kept them up. So Dover's media prediction was 19th. They finished 17th, and when I looked at their transfers, I was a bit confused. This is the most recent season. This is their season in the Premier League. Net spend of 20 million. Fred here, the best of the players they've signed. He is actually quite a good player. I'll give it to Fred. But then they've sold £71 million worth of players. Daniel Berisha, the Kosovoan, was the big sale. He left for 38 million. You might be wondering, how have they stayed up like this? I'll tell you how. The season they were in the Championship, they spent £188 million. They did also sell 100 million, but 188 million spent in the Championship. Now, as I mentioned, the sales weren't insignificant. Nathaniel Solis here, he left the club. He left for, £39 million. Joe Murray, he left to go to, as you can see here, Nottingham Forest, 30 million. Regan Dainty left to go to Hertha Berlin. So a lot of the good signings I praised them for left the club when they got relegated. I think one thing that's worth considering is that because Dover have now yo-yoed a few times, their club reputation is get kind of elevated up a level. They can just sign better players. I think one of the issues they were having with transfers previously in this experiment was their reputation was really low. So as they climbed through the leagues with some somewhat unexpected promotions, they just couldn't attract very good players without throwing absurd money at them. We're now at a point where I feel like they're starting to stabilise a little bit. Looking at things, they spent 188 million. Dan Stevens was the most significant addition. He joined from Nottingham Forest for 31 million. Elsewhere, we've got Caballero here, Uruguayan. He was signed for 26 million, 8 assists, 5 goals. That is a really good contribution. His average rating in the league, in the Premier League, was top quality too. Elsewhere, Eze Akong, he joined from Southampton. Again, not a cheap transfer at £20 million, but you can see they actually sold him on a year later after their promotion. So they're doing this wheeling and dealing quite a lot. Anton Rose, sorry, reading's hard. He was signed for 16 million. Didn't have the best year in the Premier League. But in general, their transfers just seem better now. As a result of all those transfers, obviously, the wage spend has gone up. They are only, and I say only, 16th highest in this regard. £84 million a year they're spending on players. Their net transfer spend, only the 8th highest in the Premier League. So maybe they're not buying the league. Maybe it is still an underdog story, kind of. Their standout player in this year they've stayed up was Lars Hendrik Barman. This man, Norwegian forward, 13 goals in the Premier League. Really, his goals were the difference maker for them. Looking at him, signed for £10 million from Derby. The amount of signings that Derby, Southampton and Dover have done between themselves is kind of mad. Alejandro Caballero had the best rating in the team. 43 matches played, 12 assists in all comps. Of course, we looked at this man already. For £26 million, he actually kind of delivered on what you'd hope to get for that money, I think, as a newly promoted team. And another player who put in some really good performances was Thomas Smug. Look at that smug look on his face. He was signed as a free transfer from Bayern a few years ago now. Last time they were in the Premier League, he got 1 goal and 3 assists. This year, he got 3 times more goals, 1 more assist, few player of the matches. Wasn't exactly the best season in the world for him, but he chipped in with some meaningful contributions. As we go forward now, I'm very interested to see how Dover kind of stabilise, maybe as a Premier League club. That's certainly what I'm hoping is going to happen. With that in mind, and the fact we've already talked quite a lot today, I'm going to go forward 5 years. 30 years into the future from when we started. I think that's a pretty good endpoint for this experiment. As I mentioned in earlier episodes, down in the description of this video are saved downloads. So if you want to deep dive, have a look through the transfers they made, the players they signed, maybe you'll spot some stuff that I didn't. Please do leave that. And if you spot anything really interesting, leave it in the comments. Let's go forward. 2052 Dover, where are you? So the year is 2052. Dover, look at that graph. They have established themselves as a Premier League team. They finished 8th this season, which is in fact their best ever finish. But prior to that, having been kind of promoted and stayed up last time we were here, they finished 10th, 16th, 9th, 13th. You might have spotted something that I've not acknowledged yet. They won the Conference League. Absolutely nothing else matters. Dover won European silverware, and yeah, it might have been the slightly less sexy Conference League, but a trophy is a trophy. And as they went through the knockout rounds, they won 5-0, 5-1, 5-1, and then they took on Hoffenheim in the final, and they won 2-1. Now, here's the thing. That was last year's Conference League. As a result of winning that, they get into the Europa League, and they got all the way to the final and lost in this competition as well. You can see here, they got to the knockouts. They took on Anderlecht and won 5-1, beat Liverpool 3-2 in the quarterfinals, beat Augsburg, and then they took on Newcastle. Hoffenheim, who they'd beaten the previous year in the Conference League final, very nearly got a rematch. They lost to the eventual winners, Newcastle, 6-4. And whilst, yeah, it's disappointing to see them finish as runners-up, because of this Premier League finish where they finished 8th, they still get European football for a 3rd year in a row. Now, I was a little bit confused because Billy Gee, you can see, he's still the key employer. He's still the manager. But he actually left for a little period in the middle. You can see he left his manager role. He walked away from the club. Where did you go, Billy? I need to find out. He left over to go to Leicester. He then got promoted with Leicester, became Liverpool manager, was sacked as Liverpool manager, sacked as Cardiff manager, and somehow, 5 years after he left, he's now back in the Dover seat. In the meantime, Alex Whitmore and Lee Cull were in charge. Both of them actually just left their jobs. Lee Cull went to Leicester. I'll tell you what, if Whitmore went to Leicester as well, that'd be weird, wouldn't it? In fact, he went to Wolves. So not every Dover manager ends up going to Leicester, as it turns out. So Billy Gee is back in charge. One thing I have noticed here is media prediction of 11th. They finished 8th, so that's a really good league season. Their facilities on the whole have improved quite a lot since we began, although they've not really touched their youth recruitment much in the recent years. And also their bank balance is only 64 million. Have they finally hit kind of a stage in normalisation? I mean, looking at the wage spend, it is a little more normal. They have obviously increased their wage spend since we were last here 5 years ago, as they've now become an established Premier League club, getting the TV money every year. But they only have the 11th highest in the league. In fact, they're not that far away from Manchester United looking at things. I know what you're wondering. What happened with all the transfers over the last 5 years? Let's take a look. So Thomas Smug, who I bigged up a little bit, he left to go to Barcelona for £63 million. Having scored 3 goals in the Premier League, Barcelona were convinced he's not done. Well, I was going to say he's not done great since he's gone to them. He's done pretty good. His average ratings are good. His numbers maybe slightly less impressive. On the ins, though, you can see they spent big money. Ben Diaby joined. He actually looks like a pretty good player. He's still playing for Dover at 32 years old now. Elsewhere, Sofiane Bellarabi, he now plays for Watford, a veteran centre-back at 34 years old, but Dover were not afraid to spend the big bucks on him. And also, Juan Manuel Lopez, who is no longer at the club. They snapped up for 25 million. They loaned him out to the second division of Germany, and then he went to Sheffield United for 3.3 million. He's not very good. Looking at things, once they've spent pretty big bucks, they've also been able to recoup some decent money. Duffer here, he was sold, as you can see, to West Ham for 73 million. They signed him for only 13 million a few years before. So Dover, having done some of the worst transfer business I've seen, I'm pleased to report, have started to wheel and deal a little bit. In the 2049-50 season, so 3 seasons ago, they spent some pretty big money. They sold some players as well, though. Their net spend was, I was going to say, only 80 million. That's still kind of a big net spend, isn't it? The year after that, £87 million spent, £48 million received. I feel like this is fairly normal. And then for the most recent season, a net spend of around £20 million. The big player they signed was Mariani, the Frenchman. They picked him up for £37 million from Leeds. He's got around a little bit, hasn't he? And their biggest sale that they made in that time, £51 million sold, was Gustavo Castro, who actually looks quite good. The fact they're selling this man to Olympiacos makes me wonder how good their current squad is. I mean, given the fact this is a team that won the Conference League, finished 8th in the Premier League, and this season has made it to the Europa League final, I'm expecting big things, and to be fair, I see big things. Alistair Edmondson, this man has 16 goals in the Premier League. They signed him for £16 million from Levski in Bulgaria. Not going to question that. He got 19 goals in all competitions, 20 agility. He looks like a really good player, especially for the price that they paid. Elsewhere, De Meyer here, Belgian striker, perfectionist personality. They signed him for 5.5 million a few years ago now. For the last 4 years, he has got double figures for goals. So, yeah, really good transfer. I'm beginning to realise that their best transfers weren't the most expensive ones. In terms of average ratings, one of their best performers and one of their biggest earners is Benji Diaby. This man's on £155,000 a week. They picked him up from Sheffield United for that 39.5 million. And to be fair, 5 goals, 7 assists. Benji did not do too bad. Yeah, they're investing a lot of money on the wages, but actually, they're not that weird for a top half Premier League team. They've almost just become a regular club now. They've become, well, a regular team, dare I say. I mean, they've still got an estimated value that's really high and a band balance that's really high, and we don't really question how they got to where they are. But if you loaded up this save game and just looked at it, it probably wouldn't look that weird on first viewing. The key man, by the way, at the squad is Gauthier Sleggers. This man, Belgian player, picked up for 21 million, got 1 goal in 30 from left midfield. So I went into this experiment wondering what happens if you give a club £1 billion. And whilst I expected them to get to the top, I didn't really expect them to do it the way that they've done it. Through the years of Solskjaer, kind of going up and down through League One and League Two, failing financial fair play, to now just being an established Premier League side who haven't quite been able to challenge with the big time and really push for a title charge, but ultimately are just a very, very good team. Just looking at the landmarks here, you can see when they got promoted, when they got relegated, the journey in its fullest. It's a shame it couldn't end with a Europa League season and a season in the Champions League through winning it. Anyway, folks, we are going to leave things here for today. Billy Gee, thank you for being a good manager. Chris Kinnear Park, thank you for being a lovely stadium. Thank you, you lovely lot, for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you've got any ideas for more FN experiments that you would like to see, leave them down in the comments. I'm going to have some new videos coming very, very soon like this one. If you've enjoyed this one, make sure to be subscribed. And until next time, I'll see you later. I'm out.